English. I am Estefanía Bravo in Quito, Ecuador. This is From the South. Bolivian residents were met with police and military repression as they demanded the right to food and income from the de facto government under the strict quarantine which has been imposed across the country. The residents also condemned the difficulties faced when trying to acquire basic necessities and called for the de facto president's resignation. But their demands were met with heavy repression, including the use of tear gas to disperse them, leaving an unknown number injured.
El Parador stands on his feet. We are hard companion by this government. Tell Parador Trafalgar we invite him to come to support the companions face to face. That is what we want now. Look, we are fading. Please, companions from different districts, May 1st. We invite you to accompany us.
Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez this Monday gave an update on the COVID-19 situation in the country.
We must inform that in the last 24 hours, 8 new cases have been detected, bringing the total number in Venezuela to 422. 3 of them are from the state of Aragua, 2 from the state of La Guaira, 1 from the state of Falcón, 1 from the state of Miranda, and 1 from the state of Nueva Esparta. Of these 8 cases, 3 were infected in the community. 3 are Venezuelan citizens who arrived from Colombia. Again, imported cases are an important factor in people's infection. The other 2 cases are also from Venezuelan brothers and sisters who arrive returning to our homeland.
The Vice President highlighted that the number of patients who have recovered from COVID-19 amounts for nearly half of the total confirmed cases.
On the status of cases, we have 422 cases. 48.6% are recovered cases. That gave us a figure of 205 recovered cases. 92 are in hospital. 96 are in comprehensive diagnostic centers. 19 are in private clinics, and the unfortunate figure of 10 deaths.
Moving on to the Caribbean, restrictions to travel will be gradually lifted in Grenada, among other parts of the Caribbean.
At the most recent emergency meeting of CARICOM heads and OECS heads, we collectively agreed to start gradually relaxing the restrictions for travel, as the pandemic in the region has been largely contained. Governments, airlines, and the hotels are now finalizing the details of this phased reopening, assuming that the requisite protocols are in place. We therefore expect to open our borders in the first week of June.
The government of St. Lucia is focusing on building infrastructure and climate sustainability as part of its medium-term development strategy and says it will serve as a stimulus as the country looks to bounce back from the effects of COVID-19.
We think that some of what we try to achieve are structural, try to remedy structural issues in the economy that has been there since post-independence. And so essentially, pre or post-COVID, this will remain. And so the government needs to still continue these initiatives. However, we see the MTDS now being positioned as sort of coming and give a stimulus during this time. So it's really about the issue of timing. If we fast-track some of these initiatives, particularly infrastructure projects, we have a very ambitious road infrastructure project. And again, building climate resilience to infrastructure. We have a hurricane season is just around the corner. So we see the medium-term development strategy now doubling up as a sort of a stimulus in the short term by providing an injection of resources into the economy through capital projects, but also helping us and putting us on a platform that we could have a quicker recovery.
Thousands of Jamaicans overseas have applied to return home using an app. The government says it is reviewing applications and asks for patience throughout the process.
In respect of the controlled reentry program, advised that we have close to 7,500 applications now through the Jam COVID app and website. And I will just use the opportunity to reiterate that because of the number of applications and because we are managing controlled reentry based on the amount of quarantine and isolation capacity which we have in Jamaica, there will not be an immediate response to your application. You will get your case number. That means your application is submitted. You don't have to keep applying in order to hear from us. Once you have a case number, it is received, but the process, the time that will take you to get to conditional approval and ultimately to approval, where you would have made travel arrangements, will take a bit more time. So we're asking again, yes, for your patience and understanding.
Jamaica is looking to reopen bars in the near future with some specific regulations which must be maintained and which are subject to an assessment following a period of 2 weeks.
Tomorrow, we will give notice to all operators of community bars. We're asking these bars to take into consideration the protocols that are being outlined as to how they will commence operation within the framework that I'm about to announce. We are expecting that when the announcement is made, that bars will be open from 11 a.m. commencing the 19th of May and will remain open for 2 weeks.
Churches will also be able to open beginning on May 16th, also with numerous health and distancing requirements.
We're proposing that within a context agreed with the faith-based community, the physical distancing rules to apply within the sanctuary or worship space. And that is, we expect that a ratio of square footage to persons will be maintained, that is 1 person per 40 square feet. So this will determine the number of persons that will be in the church space at any one time. They should ensure that there is no overlapping of the service. So one congregation comes in for a particular service, they leave, give enough time so that they can sanitize the church hall, and then another congregation comes in for their second service or how many other service they wish to have.
More stories coming up, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. More news now. Argentina will extend negotiations over a $65 billion debt restructuring proposal until May 22nd, setting the stage for a tense last-ditch talks as the South American nation races to avoid default. The new deadline, which comes after an initial cutoff last Friday without the support needed for a comprehensive deal, the offer will expire, and on the same day, Argentina could default over a $500 million interest payment. The government has been working to restructure unsustainable debts amidst a painful recession, skyrocketing inflation, and increasingly expensive borrowing costs, as concerns over a potential 9th sovereign default have rattled investors and hit bond prices. The talks so far have been complex, with 3 major creditor groups rejecting the initial proposal and pushing for improved terms. Argentine officials have said the country cannot afford to pay more than they are offering, though they are open to counter proposals. Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has been criticized for continuously breaking social quarantine despite thousands of COVID-19 cases in the country. Brazil is also projected to be the future epicenter of the pandemic. Criticisms against President Bolsonaro were renewed after he was seen riding on a jet ski on a lake in Brasilia, accompanied by some of his followers. Brazil has already surpassed 10,000 coronavirus deaths, a figure that makes the country the sixth most affected by the pandemic and #1 in Latin America. The number of people who have died from the coronavirus pandemic, as mentioned in Brazil, has surpassed 11,000. Our correspondent, Brian Muir, has more.
Brazil reached the 11,000 mark in deaths from the deadly coronavirus pandemic over the weekend, propelling it into 6th place in the world's list of worst countries for the pandemic. As far-right President Jair Bolsonaro spent Saturday jet skiing and barbecuing and visiting fans without using any kind of protective equipment, continuing to tell people that they shouldn't worry about it, that it's just a little flu, the governors increased their lockdown measures. In the state of Maranhão, Communist Governor Flávio Dino issued a decree yesterday taking over the emergency rooms of all of the state's private hospitals. Meanwhile, São Paulo has worked hard to lower the occupancy rate of its ICU units. In the past week, ICU unit occupancy dropped from 90 to 83% in São Paulo, the capital, which is the hardest hit city in the state, and the statewide level is 67%. Now, São Paulo remains the epicenter of coronavirus transmission in Brazil. It has 3,700 deaths and over 40,000 cases documented so far. And the governor has announced that he's not going to ease any of the lockdown measures until the ICU hospital occupancy rates drop below 60% statewide level. That's definitely going to take a little more time because the death rates continue to increase. So for now, there is no sign that the lockdown measures implemented by the state governors are going to ease up despite far-right President Bolsonaro's anti-scientific conspiracy theory rhetoric.
We thank Brian Muir for that report. Meanwhile, at least 22 homeless people have died, while another 40 are suspected of being infected with COVID-19 in the city of Sao Paulo. The center of the city is crowded with homeless people sleeping in tents, under bridges, or in public squares, which makes them more vulnerable to the coronavirus. The number of homeless in the city of Sao Paulo has increased by 53% in the last 4 years, topping 24,000 in 2019, according to City Hall data.
Our worst problem is the lack of housing. If we had a home, I would be there during the quarantine. I wouldn't be in the street. The coronavirus is just one more problem we face.
This situation we are facing now just highlights the big drama of inequality. There was a post on social media that exemplified this. We cannot say everybody's in the same boat. We can say we're in the same sea. Ones are in their yacht, others are swimming.
Uruguay's government says it will allow the crew of a virus-infected Australian cruise ship Greg Mortimer to disembark at a port in the capital, Montevideo. A senior government official said the crew will be taken by buses to a specially equipped hotel to undergo quarantine. 2 people who are seriously ill have already been hospitalized. The crew remained on board long after the ship's passengers were allowed to disembark and flown to their home countries last month.
Not at all. Everyone is calm, very quiet. When you are a sailor, you prepare for a desertion, a fire, but never for a virus, right? But everyone is calm, and I think happy to be here.
Various social and political sectors in Colombia have condemned recent state spending to buy equipment for the special riot police force. Social organizations say the funds should have been used to help citizens deal with the economic consequences of the coronavirus lockdown.
En momentos de aislamiento obligatorio,
the economic crisis has worsened during the mandatory quarantine for Colombia's most vulnerable people. Many have been forced into the streets to beg for help to get them through this crisis.
In the middle of the pandemic, 9.5 billion pesos will be spent to buy 81,000 tear gas canisters and 13,000 bullets, like the ones used to murder Dylan Cruz for the special riot police.
This contract was started on April 20 by President Duque. In dollars, it amounts to $2.3 million.
The contract also mentions the purchase of over 23,000 marking cartridges, 11,000 stun grenades, and 500 grenades. All of this equipment will go to the hands of the SMAT Special Forces, a police unit that has been questioned over its use of excessive force against citizens.
They have the funds to fully equip a police force that has, over the 5 years, murdered 19 people. But to equip medical personnel during this crisis, there are no funds, even though these people are saving lives. They don't even have enough supplies to do their job. This decision is highly myopic.
In the midst of the COVID-19 emergency and a growing economic crisis, social protests have regained strength to demand help from the government.
We're seeing doublespeak from authorities. The president and the mayor are saying they are guaranteeing our rights, but we have seen the harsh repression used against popular mobilizations. During the first 3 weeks of the quarantine, we saw the special riot police attack citizens indiscriminately. When people were asking for food, hunger is answered with repression, and it's going to be worse now.
State funds have also been assigned to buy tanks and armored trucks for the SMAT and for a social media campaign to improve the image of President Ivan Duque, totaling at around $8 million.
We're taking one last break, but stay with us.
The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. Mondays, only on Telesur. A review of the world news that investigates, incites analysis, and induces criticism, because every event has a context.
Pusimos el punto en I.
Dot in the I. Saturdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back to From the South. In the United States, the governor of New York has announced that schools will remain closed for the rest of the academic year, despite pressure from President Donald Trump and corporations to reopen all sectors.
When we reopen, we're talking about a phased reopening. That's what everyone basically is doing. The question is moderating that phasing and doing it intelligently. But starting with construction and manufacturing, retail, curbside pickup, agriculture, forestry, and fishing, then to phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, monitoring all along.
The World Health Organization has warned countries against rushing to lift COVID-19 measures before the pandemic is under control.
The good news is that there has been a great deal of success in slowing the virus and ultimately saving lives. However, such strong measures have come at a cost, and we recognize the serious socio-economic impact of the lockdowns, which have had a detrimental effect on many people's lives. Therefore, to protect lives and livelihoods, a slow, steady lifting of lockdowns is key to both stimulating economies while also keeping a vigilant eye on the virus so that control measures can be quickly implemented if an upswing in cases is identified.
Senegalese President Macky Sall announced that coronavirus restrictions adopted over the past few weeks will be eased from Tuesday onwards. Senegal has reported over 1,800 COVID-19 cases and 19 deaths.
I decided that the emergency state measures taken will be eased as follows. From Tuesday, May 12, 2020 onwards, curfew hours will be from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. instead of 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. Office hour will be from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Markets and other business, which previously could only open on certain days, will be open 6 days and closed on 1 day dedicated to cleaning.
China has sent a team of 12 medical experts to Zimbabwe to help fight the coronavirus pandemic. The team arrived in the capital Harare on Sunday along with medical supplies including ventilators, testing kits, face masks, and protective suits. Zimbabwean health officials thanked China for the gesture, saying it will boost the country's capacity to deal with the pandemic. 2 people have been killed in a grenade attack in Burundi's capital, Bujumbura. The attack, which took place on Sunday, just days ahead of a general election, was blamed on unidentified criminals who targeted a bar in a working-class district. According to witnesses, the bar belongs to a member of the youth wing of the ruling party, the National Coalition for the Defense of Democracy. They said the bar occasionally serves as a meeting place for members of the Youth League, which in the past has been accused of engaging in political violence, including calling for the murder and rape of opposition supporters.
I got here and the incident was already over. I found injured people. We asked passing vehicles to take them to Doctors Without Borders. There were about 10 injured people. There were no deaths on the scene, only injuries and property damage, as you have seen.
The Malian National Assembly has elected Moussa Timbine as its new leader. He was declared a winner after receiving 134 votes to beat his closest rival, Moussa Mara, who got less than 10 votes. He was previously served as the president of the Youth League of the Rally for Mali party, and he was also the first vice president of the outgoing National Assembly.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Moussa Timbine, having obtained 134 votes or an absolute majority, is therefore elected President of the National Assembly of Mali.
I thank the Almighty for the grace He has bestowed on me in this blessed month of Ramadan, through my election today as President of this venerable National Assembly of Mali.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at teleserenglish.net. And be sure to follow us on social media as well. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Teleser English, I am Estefania Bravo. Until next time.